To the president. He's been asked questions on a wide range of issues, but the breaking news right now that CBS has been reporting is that U.S. officials believe with a high degree of confidence that the passenger plane that went down in Iraq was shot down by an Iranian missile or something along those lines. 176 people?
Correct.
Were
176 people
from
were
a number of different countries.
Exactly right. And so the president was asked about that actually during the press conference it was sort of impromptu press conference that he was doing there at the White House. And president was very sort of tight-lipped to the details.
Right.
But it's interesting, you and I this morning, Anne-Marie, when we were talking about this with Chris Van Cleve, our transportation correspondent, who has confirmed the news and will be joining us in a moment to talk about this. Is Chris?
No, we don't have Chris, but we do have Liz Palmer.
Oh, okay.
She is in Tehran. So, Liz, you've been covering what has been happening in Tehran and how it's being spun. And now we have this new information that it seems at least U.S. officials believe that the passenger plane that went down, the Boeing plane that went down as a result of an Iranian mistake, essentially. Liz, what are you hearing?
The news has broke just in the last short while. This is the eve of the weekend, and it took officials a while to react. Just a few minutes ago, the head of the Civil Aviation Authority came out publicly and said, this is simply not true. So Iran, for the moment, officially denying that it was a missile. The Revolutionary Guard website, or affiliated website, is saying, look, it's a conspiracy cooked up by the opposition. This didn't happen. Iran, as soon as the plane went down, or very shortly afterwards, said it was fairly confident that it had been an engine fire as a result of some catastrophic mechanical failure. And they stuck to that story for the first day. Then the Ukraine weighed in and doubts began to circulate, especially on social media. And then today the Ukrainians said they were considering 4 possibilities, and one of them was a missile strike. So publicly showing that they weren't buying this assurance from the Iranians that it had been a catastrophic mechanical error. Now, the Ukrainian investigators will be looking at the wreckage. The Iranians, for the moment, have the black boxes, but they say they'll share them with the Ukrainians. And the Canadian civil aviation authorities may also get involved. They're investigators. This is early days yet. As you know, a proper investigation can take weeks and months, so we may not have confirmation for some time.
All right, Liz, just stand by for us for one moment. I know it's late there in Tehran, but we want to get straight to Chris Van Cleve, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. Chris, just break down for our viewers the reporting that you and others at CBS News have confirmed.
Sure. What we have learned, and apparently federal officials were briefed on this morning, that U.S. officials are confident this Ukrainian airliner was shot down by Iran. U.S. intelligence picked up signals of Iranian radar being turned on, and then U.S. satellites detected infrared blips of 2 missile launches, followed shortly thereafter by another infrared blip that they believe was the explosion. We have since seen some video that appears to show the moment of impact. The plane, as it was climbing, an explosion midair, followed by it coming down and crashing in a large fireball on the ground. And that tracks with the information we have. You heard Liz say that the Iranians have been saying the plane was turning around and trying to go back. Well, there is no publicly available flight data that supports that. This looked like a normal takeoff out of Tehran that this flight does every day. It got to 8,000 feet and then everything cut off. That is very consistent with some sort of catastrophic event happening in midair, like being struck by a missile. Now, what we are hearing is the belief is that this was a mistake. It was not intentionally targeted, but remember, this was just a couple of hours after the Iranians had launched their missile strikes on Iraq, and the world was really holding its breath to see if there would be a U.S. military response. So certainly, Iranian forces would have been on high alert.
All right, Chris Van Cleve, thank you so much, Chris, for your reporting. I know you've got to get to more reporting, so we appreciate you spending some time with us. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Let's go back to Liz.
Liz, I wanted to ask you sort of a quick question. We know shortly after the strikes on the bases in Iraq, we were hearing two different stories. The president was saying there were no casualties, but Iranian state TV was saying something completely different, that there were multiple casualties. And so now we're hearing that, according to Iranian state TV, it's a different story than what CBS News has been reporting, that we're hearing from U.S. officials. What's the likelihood of the people in Iran hearing if you want, for lack of a better phrase, what we're hearing here in the U.S.? I mean, I know that prior to all of this, there had been protests in Iran, that they had shut down the internet for a period of time, but you can't shut that down forever.
Oh, the internet is working fine, and you can bet that this story, this news, is ricocheting around social media right now. Iranians are very tech savvy, and there are huge numbers of social media websites and bloggers and activists, and they'll be making sure that this news is everywhere on the internet at the moment. The Iranian officialdom is going to be scrambling to come up with a sophisticated response. And we may not see it for some time yet. As I mentioned, this is the eve of the weekend. If this is true, it's going to be terrifyingly embarrassing for them. You may wonder why an aircraft hit by a missile doesn't disintegrate. If this was what some of the experts are saying, a Tor missile, sometimes used for anti-aircraft defense, the way they work is they get close to the plane and explode. And in fact, the plane is then hit by shrapnel, which is what brings it down. So it is conceivable that that's what happened here. But as I said, you know, this investigation, if it's careful and thorough, as I think it must be, because the stakes are so high, and this is such a tense time, it is going to take at least weeks.
I'll be interested too, Liz, to know, I mean, you talk about the fact that the internet is alive and well in Iran, and that the news will ricochet all across the country. But it sort of makes me wonder, why not, if you're the Iranian government, get ahead of this? Already there were reports out that they would not share the black box details, but then we had the video. In other words, in 2020, information finds its way to the people. And so now, as you point out, it's going to be hugely embarrassing for them. And they're going to have to answer not just to their own people, but to the nationals of other countries, primarily Canada, that had a lot of questions as to exactly what happened. And so I understand the kind of government the people of Iran live under, but I'm just sort of curious, having covered the area for so long, why you don't think they didn't attempt at least to get ahead of this?
Well, it has huge implications, you know, not only public relations, but security related, defense related, and so on. And if it was a mistake, it's a catastrophic mistake. The Iranian government in the past has struggled to come up with a message. There are many factions inside the government, and they will all want their own narrative to prevail. And so even if the Iranians suspected this is what happened, and have suspected for several days, history teaches us that they're probably working very hard within the government to make the narrative coherent. And they probably still are. We don't know yet, but as an educated guess, I would say that's what's going on.
All right, Liz Palmer for us. I know it's late, Liz, almost 9 p.m. there. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and shedding light for our viewers. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, Chief Washington Correspondent Major Garrett is joining us now from Washington with a lot more. So, Major, you heard the reporting from Liz. You've spoken, obviously, to Chris Van Cleave. You just had him there for the special report. What's your analysis about where we go from here?
Well, a lot more needs to be learned and verified, but this is a stream of information that U.S. intelligence officials began gathering yesterday, were able to confirm overnight, and it's interesting at one level to think about the technological sweep of satellite gathered data, because there are no black boxes yet that have been analyzed, and yet U.S. intelligence has a pretty clear picture of what happened, as do Canadian authorities and maybe the Ukrainians. What was the flight trajectory? What was happening? what appeared to have been a catastrophic event and what may have been the event that caused that catastrophic event. All of that is now being pieced together without black boxes and without any particular assistance from the Iranian government. That is a bit of sleuthing that is of importance both in terms of technology, in terms of answering to those families for the victims of this crash, and placing whatever accountability falls upon the civilian air authorities in Iran. That's one dimension of this story. The other dimension of this story is Iran likes to say it follows international law and international procedure. To do that in civil aviation, you must cooperate. And its lack of cooperation and its inability to explain, as you were just talking to Liz Palmer about, undercuts that public face of cooperation and adherence to international law. So there will be tremendous pressure on the Iranians to come to grips with this reality and make public amends for what I think Liz Palmer just accurately described as a catastrophic mistake. President Trump's words, we heard just a few moments ago at the White House, he is under the assumption it was a mistake. U.S. officials looking at all the available data believe it was a mistake. But a mistake doesn't mean people didn't die. They did die. And the Iranians will be under tremendous international pressure to come to grips with that reality, make amends, and it, in this particular atmosphere brought about by the U.S. missile strike that killed Qasem Soleimani and others, take away some aspect that Iran was trying to express to the world, meaning it was a victim. Well, now there are victims of an Iranian possible mistake. And there will have to be sort of an accounting of that, and it will change the general atmospherics around Iran. But this is a dreadful, dreadful occurrence for the families of those aboard that aircraft. And all of this information now seems to move inescapably toward the conclusion that one or two missiles were fired, a radar system was turned on, and this catastrophic event happened at the hands of Iranian officials. And if it was a mistake, accountability for that mistake, both in public expression and other means, is going to be the first stage of this, and how that proceeds in terms of compensation or other changes is yet to be known.
All right, Major Garrett, thank you so much. Appreciate your insight. We want to bring in Colonel Jeffrey McCausland now. He's joining us on the phone. He's a CBS News radio military consultant. You know, in talking about the tensions that were sort of rising up between Iran and the U.S., the concern had always been the unintended consequences once there was any sort of military action. And Colonel, you know, yesterday it seemed as if the unintended consequences had been contained. There were, according to the president, no casualties at all in Iraq. And now we find out about this plane going down, and the casualties here they're Iraqis, they are Canadian, they're from the Ukraine. This is sort of more now almost an international incident. Can we talk a little bit about the ripple effect of this information?
Absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. In a crisis between two countries like this, you start putting more and more military forces in a region. You put those military forces on higher and higher levels of operational readiness, because you expect the probability of an attack is going up higher and higher and higher. You may then pre-delegate authority for certain elements to engage targets because you think that the likelihood of an attack is imminent. And you put all those things together, and bad things can happen. You know, when you give everybody a bunch of guns, somebody's going to shoot somebody. And unfortunately, in very sad terms, that's exactly what seems to happen here. We had seen the Iranians, as the previous speaker, I think, suggested quite well, putting their forces at higher level of operational readiness in the days prior to this attack by them and after the killing of Soleimani and the attacks on the American embassy. We had seen them moving forces around. Suddenly you have this aircraft go up, a radar picks it up, we've pre-delegated authority, somebody makes a mistake, and we engage. And don't forget, we've seen this ripple effect in our own country in past. 1988, in a previous confrontation with Iran, right in the Persian Gulf, the USS Vincennes, operating in that area, picks up on the radar an aircraft that it believes is threatening and is heading its way. Vincennes engaged that aircraft. It was an Iranian civilian airliner and we killed 280 Iranian civilians in that particular launch and that mistake.
Colonel, in fact, Anne-Marie and I were talking about that earlier, Iran Air Flight 655. We also referenced the Korean Airlines Flight 007 that was shot down by a Soviet interceptor fighter in the same period of time. And certainly we just recently, in 2014, had Malaysia Air Flight 17 that was shot down, too. So the question, I guess, becomes when the tension between countries escalates, and as everyone over the past couple of hours has breathed a sigh of relief that no, we are not engaging in a war with the Islamic Republic of Iran, but the unintended consequences of the loss, the heartbreaking loss of civilian life, people who were just carrying on with their lives on their way to do God knows what, who are all of a sudden shot out of the sky as a mistake, as is perhaps being reported right now. We don't have all of the details, but it is sort of, the question becomes when countries engage in this war of words, when tensions rise beyond the point that they have over the past couple of years, things like this can happen.
That's exactly right. And on top of that, of course, you put into the fact that we have conventional weaponry that can wreak grievous harm like this very, very quickly. And we know that the time periods for decision making, because of the nature of this modern technology, are extremely short. So people are under enormous pressure to make a decision. In this case in particular, though all these situations we talk about are similar in some ways, they're all different in some ways as well. The shooting down of the Iranian airliner by the United States, as I recall, was over international airspace over the Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea. In this particular case, the aircraft was over Iranian territory. So for an Iranian air defense officer, this makes that threat perhaps even greater. My time periods are even shorter, that I've got to make a decision on whether or not I engage.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess what I sort of keep thinking is, where do we go from here, right? What is your expectation? I'm asking for a little bit of speculation now, but you said we've seen this before, but do we expect that will an incident like this be enough to bring the temperature down, to let cooler heads prevail moving forward?
Well, one would only hope, but it remains to be seen. Obviously, the shooting down of the airliner by the Vincennes did not bring the United States and Iran to the conference table to settle their differences, some now 20 or 30 years ago. And hopefully that will be different today. We will see, I think, some discussion by the United Nations. And the previous speaker was quite right in how Iran is going to react in terms of cooperation in international law to grant access to the wreckage to ascertain without any question what actually happened. Will the Ukrainians, in fact, and the Canadians who suffered grievously pursue this to the United Nations? It's an additional problem right now. The United States has stymied the appearance by the Iranian foreign minister at the UN in New York to talk about the crisis even prior to this. Will we now allow that to happen, for example? And then finally, and this is very little to no solace for families who are crushed at this moment, what happens in the aftermath? Well, the United States paid $60 million in compensation to Iranian civilians who were killed in the Iranian airliner. Whether or not over time something like that will happen, again, that's a speculation on how things will turn out legally and diplomatically, but has no real, no real solace for these nations and people who have suffered so badly.
In fact, Colonel, we're showing images of some family members crushed, heartbroken in learning the news of the death of their loved ones. I wonder, Colonel, you pointed out that in the wake of that Iran Air flight that was shot down in 1988, I believe, that the United States ended up paying compensation to those families. I wonder, Colonel, if you see, as a military man, you see an opportunity here for the United States, understanding that Iran and the Ayatollahs have exported terrorism around the world, and they've been responsible for the deaths of many Americans and many of our allies and even of their own people. But if this is an opportunity for the United States to extend a working relationship in trying to understand exactly what happened, and in working with the FAA and others to perhaps ensure that something like this does not happen, given that we've had, I mean, even just one of these incidents is enough. We just talked about 4 of them that have happened in the last 35 plus years or so. If this is an opportunity for the United States to say, hey, let's put aside these differences and work to alleviate the suffering of these victims.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is an opportunity actually for international cooperation between Iran and the United States. But both sides are so terribly suspicious of the other at the moment, it's hard for me to see that will occur. It is also important how the two sides interpret this. And frankly, I'm glad to see the President of the United States interpreting this as a grievous error, which is what I believe it was as well, and not reversing his speech from yesterday, in which he announced that the United States would not respond in massive military terms to the attack by Iran on the U.S. bases in Iraq, and not further escalated tensions. That we're going to step back now and see if there's an opportunity for discussion. But the bottom line is, and I've served in combat zones in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Balkans, Kosovo, been to Salvador. And one thing that's sad to me that we always overlook, we talk about the number of dead. For example, in the war in Iraq, 4,500 young Americans were killed, and somewhere between 30 and 40,000 young Americans were wounded. They were badly affected. Their families were grievously affected. But the real losers in war, in my experience, are civilians. Yeah. Most often women, kids, old people. You see them, they're the ones that suffer. They're the ones that suffer when their homes are destroyed. They're the ones that are suffered when disease breaks out. They're the ones that we colloquially call collateral damage, which in a way you could say this is on this particular airliner. But it's the civilian casualty figures that sometimes we kind of ignore, but are really the ones who really suffer when countries confront each other and start moving lots of military hardware around.
So true. Colonel, thank you so much.
So true, that poignant point of the fact that the people who have really nothing to do with this whatsoever are the ones who ultimately pay the ultimate price.
Yeah.
Colonel Jeffrey McCausland, thank you so much, Colonel. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, so we want to bring in Behnam Bentaleblu. He is on the phone with us. He is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. So Behnam, you know this area of the world quite well, and we have been discussing throughout the week, the fact that when one domino falls in the Middle East, another domino will follow. And what does that mean? What are the unintended consequences? So when you are hearing about this news that this plane may have been mistakenly shot down by the Iranians, what are your concerns as you sort of look forward at the ripple effect?
Well, knowing full well that we still have much more escalation underway in 2020. Remember that even if Qasem Soleimani, the now killed Major General who led Iran's extraterritorial Quds Force, that's the Special Operations Unit of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, even if he hadn't died, the U.S. and Iran had baked in this escalation cycle of sanctions and regional escalation and pressure from both sides. They're both playing chicken with each other, and the regional theater is one of those areas where they are playing chicken. So what is happening around that now, and this is most tragically, most unfortunately, and in some ways disgustingly personified by the downing of this civilian airliner, something which unfortunately is also not unique to the U.S.-Iran conflict paradigm. You remember in 1988, the downing of the Iran air flight, which President Rouhani recently mentioned on Twitter. These things happen amid the fog of war. And amid the fog of war, having personnel that know even the most accurately sent signal can be misinterpreted, and things that are not even clearly communicated will be further misinterpreted, means that human lives are more on the line than ever before. And that means professional, accomplished personnel on both sides matter very much. And I could absolutely see a scenario where just hours after Iran does this 1 hour-long missile barrage, you have air defense folks and Revolutionary Guard folks and missile folks very nervous, very trigger-happy, on high alert, knowing they've done something they haven't done since the end of the Iran-Iraq War in over 3 decades. Iran hasn't fired ballistic missiles from its territory into the territory of another country, targeting a state asset, a state actor, and not only that, targeting the United States of America, the world superpower, knowing full well that there may be some kind of response. They see this as a miscommunication or some kind of mispainting on the radar, and they fire. And that is how lives are lost. This is how actually cycles of violence continue. This is things that can not only, I think your previous caller was saying, that can not only contribute to a de-escalation, but in fact, if this is misread, could lead to an escalation. I can't tell you how many people were beseeching me the moment it was reported that this flight to Ukraine was shot. There was talk of Lockerbie, there was talk of conspiracy theories, there was talk of mechanical failure, but it seems to be now an Occam's razor approach amidst the war zone. And make no mistake, Iraq and Iran, that whole Persian Gulf area is a war zone. These things happen, and this is why war should be avoided. But more importantly, This is why those who thrive on living in the gray zone, on cultivating ambiguity, countries like the Islamic Republic of Iran, are ultimately to blame for these kinds of activities.
Behnam, I just want to ask you something quickly. You know, before all of this happened, there were mass protests in the streets in Iran. It was over quality of life issues, the price of oil. And then when General Soleimani was killed, we saw thousands take to the streets, not protesting the regime, but instead they were sort of almost pulled together by his death and by the fact that his death at the hands of a foreign power. And it seemed to give the regime a break. I'm wondering now, do you think that knowledge or the news that Iran may have been responsible, well, in Iran they're not getting the same story, right? But news that Iran may have been responsible for the downing of this plane, do you think that will have an impact on the politics domestically?
I don't necessarily think on the domestic politics, because elite perceptions are not what matter here. I think it's about what matters for the people. And you're right to bring up those quality of life and not just economic but political issues that brought Iranians out onto the street and kept them on the street and are continuing to bring them out on the street. You know, one trend in Iran is that the major flashpoints for anti-government protests used to be every 10 years, 5 years. Now they've dropped down to just 1 year, a matter of months. There's been major protests 2017, 2018, 2019, and those will continue, in my view. Yes, you've had a blip. The regime was trying to stir up some kind of Islamist, nationalist, hybrid frenzy after the death of Soleimani. You saw that with the 3 days of public mourning. You saw that with the timing and the delaying of Soleimani's burial for the timing of the strike of the ballistic missiles against the base in Iraq where the U.S. and Iraqis are co-located. And then now you have this story. We have to remember the regime always uses the Iran Air story, where 290 innocent Iranians were needlessly killed in an accident at the tail end of the Iran-Iraq war. The regime always uses that as a prop in its conspiracy theory and in its narrative at home, saying that the West is evil, that America is evil. America apologized. America, as your previous caller said, ended up paying. What will the Iranians do now? From the first moment the story was reported, the Iranians said that they would not give up the black box, and they did not provide any further information. The Iranian people should see this as yet another measure of the lack of goodwill of their own government towards the international community.
All right. Behnam Ben Talebou, thank you so much, Behnam.
Thank you.
All right, if you are just joining us, U.S. officials say they are confident an Iranian missile was responsible for the Ukrainian plane crash in Iran that killed all 176 people on board. Sources say it was shot down likely by mistake. In fact, the President of the United States said that he believes that it was a mistake. This happened hours before the flight took off, after the flight took off from Tehran. Iranian forces were launching missile strikes against Iraqi military bases housing U.S. troops. U.S. intelligence picked up signals of a radar beam being turned on. U.S. satellites also detected 2 surface-to-air missile launches, which happened shortly before the plane exploded.
Missile parts were found near where the plane came down. Both of the plane's flight data recorders were recovered, but one appears to be damaged. Iran is denying the claims, calling the crash a catastrophic mechanical failure. The president addressed the news earlier. Here's some of what he had to say.
I have my suspicions. It was very, I don't want to say that because other people have those suspicions also. It's a tragic thing when I see that. It's a tragic thing. But somebody could have made a mistake on the other side, could have made a mistake. It was flying, it was flying in, not our system, no, it has nothing to do with us. It was flying in a pretty rough neighborhood, and somebody could have made a mistake. Some people say it was mechanical. I personally don't think that's even a question.
So the president was speaking at that time as the news was breaking. He might have been actually unaware that CBS News had already gone to air with the information that that our reporters were able to find. But we have a lot more news to get to this hour. We're going to continue to monitor this developing story. But first, we're going to take a break. So stick with us. You're streaming CBSN, CBS News, always on. You can watch CBSN 24/7.
We've got an amazing story to share with you.
Let's talk about the latest developments.
There's so many levels to this. We have a CBS News exclusive.
Fires in California.
What happens next, and how does it all play out?
We are on a mission with NASA.
I understand you have some breaking news. It's not over yet, is the bottom line.
This is a massive operation.
It's quite an adventure here at CBSN.
It's been a day.
You can watch CBSN 24/7. It's easy to find us and it's free. One way to watch us is on our website, cbsnews.com. Just go to live and then click CBSN. You'll be instantly connected to CBSN for all of the latest news. And you can also watch by downloading the free CBS News app. Just click on the player and you're watching CBSN live. Check us out on all of your devices. We're always on.
What really matters in journalism? The truth matters. Facts matter. Getting to the heart of the story matters.
Your dad saved their lives.
It's what we do at CBS News, and it's our promise to you. The CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.